Have you ever been in a job interview, and when the topic of salary came up, your mind suddenly went blank? Maybe you knew the words, but you weren't sure which one sounded polite, professional, or natural. So instead of asking questions, you just nodded, smiled, and accepted whatever they offered. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many English learners feel confident talking about daily life, travel, or hobbies. But when it comes to money at work, everything suddenly feels uncomfortable and risky.
That's because salary conversations in English follow hidden cultural rules. One small mistake, one sentence that sounds too direct, or one word that feels too emotional, and the conversation can become awkward very quickly. You might sound rude without meaning to, or unprofessional even if your grammar is perfect. And the worst part is, people usually won't correct you. They'll just form an impression and move on.
But here's the good news. In today's episode of Speak English Every Day, we're going to give you the exact phrases native speakers use to talk about salary, raises, and compensation at work. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to ask about salary politely, how to talk about money with confidence, and how to sound calm, professional, and natural in some of the most important conversations of your career. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Speak English Every Day. We're really happy you decided to spend part of your day with us. Whether you're listening on your way to work, studying at home, or just relaxing, this is your time to focus on practical English that you can actually use in real life. Our goal is simple: to help you sound more natural, more confident, and more comfortable in everyday conversations.
That's right. This podcast is designed especially for English learners who want to speak clearly and confidently in real situations, not just pass exams or memorize grammar rules. Here, we focus on useful expressions, natural dialogues, and the kind of language you'll hear in workplaces, interviews, and daily interactions with native speakers. If this is your first time here, welcome to the community. In every episode, we break down a real-life topic and give you practical phrases you can start using immediately. And if you've been with us for a while, thank you for coming back. Your consistency and practice are what make the biggest difference in your English progress.
Last week, I had a conversation with a friend who had just started a new job, and she told me something that really stayed on my mind. She was excited about the position, the team, and the company. But when I asked her if she negotiated her salary, she just smiled awkwardly and said no. She admitted that she wanted to ask for more, but she was afraid of saying the wrong thing in English. She didn't want to sound rude, demanding, or unprofessional, so she simply accepted the first number they offered.
That situation is incredibly common among English learners. Many people feel confident discussing daily topics like food, travel, or hobbies, but when it comes to money, especially in a professional setting, everything suddenly feels more serious and more stressful. There's a lot at stake, and learners worry that one wrong phrase could create a bad impression or even cost them the job.
And the truth is, that fear isn't completely irrational. Salary conversations in English-speaking workplaces follow certain cultural expectations. It's not just about vocabulary or grammar. It's about tone, politeness, and the way you frame your message. Two sentences can have the same meaning, but one can sound professional while the other sounds rude or emotional.
Exactly. For example, a learner might say, "I want more money," because that's the direct translation from their native language. Grammatically, that sentence is correct. But in many English-speaking workplaces, it sounds too direct, too emotional, and sometimes even a little aggressive. A native speaker would usually use softer, more indirect language.
So learners often find themselves in a difficult position. If they stay silent, they may accept a lower salary than they deserve. But if they speak up using the wrong phrase, they worry about damaging the relationship with their manager or interviewer. That pressure makes the whole conversation feel uncomfortable and risky. So before we go any further, let's talk about what you're actually going to gain from this episode. We don't just want to give you random vocabulary or a long list of expressions. Our goal is to give you practical tools, phrases and strategies you can use in real conversations at work, in interviews, or during performance reviews. By the end of this episode, you should feel more confident, more prepared, and much less nervous about talking about money in English.
Exactly. Think of this episode as a short training session for one of the most important professional conversations you can have. When you know the right language, you don't just sound more fluent, you sound more professional and more competent. And that changes how people see you. It can influence hiring decisions, promotions, and the opportunities you get in your career.
So here's the first thing you'll learn today. You'll discover how to ask about salary politely, without sounding too direct or rude. Instead of using phrases that feel uncomfortable or awkward, you'll learn expressions that native speakers use in interviews and workplace conversations. These are safe, professional phrases that help you start the conversation in the right way.
Second, you'll learn how to talk about raises, promotions, and benefits like a native speaker. Many learners know the word of salary, but they're not sure when to use words like compensation, income, wages, or benefits. We'll break down these differences in a simple, clear way, so you can choose the right word in the right situation.
And third, you'll understand the hidden cultural rules around money at work. This is something most textbooks don't explain. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it. You'll learn why some phrases sound too direct, why others sound more professional, and how to frame money conversations in a way that feels natural to native speakers. Before we jump into specific phrases and vocabulary, there's something even more important you need to understand. Talking about money in English-speaking workplaces is not just about grammar or translation. It's deeply connected to culture. In many English-speaking countries, money is considered a very private topic. People often feel uncomfortable when someone asks direct questions about their salary, especially in professional settings. So even if your sentence is grammatically correct, it might still sound inappropriate or too personal.
That's right. In some cultures, it's normal to ask friends or coworkers about their salary, and nobody feels uncomfortable. It's just a normal conversation. But in many English-speaking workplaces, questions about income are treated almost like questions about someone's age, weight, or personal relationships. They're seen as private matters. So when learners ask something like, "How much do you make?" they don't realize that the question itself may feel intrusive to the listener.
And here's the tricky part. Native speakers usually won't correct you in that moment. They won't say, "That question is rude." Instead, they'll just feel uncomfortable and try to change the subject. Internally, they might think, "This person doesn't understand professional culture." So the learner never gets direct feedback, and the misunderstanding continues.
That's why we like to think of salary language as a kind of safety ladder. Imagine a ladder with 3 levels. At the bottom, you have very direct phrases that can sound rude or immature. In the middle, you have phrases that are grammatically correct but still feel awkward or too emotional. And at the top, you have the phrases native speakers actually use: polite, indirect, and professional language.
At the lowest level, you'll hear very direct questions like, "How much do you make?" or "What's your salary?" These might seem normal to a learner, especially if they're translated directly from another language. But in many professional situations, they sound too blunt. They don't respect the cultural idea that money is a private topic.
Exactly. And it's not that native speakers never talk about money. Of course they do. but they usually use softer, more indirect language. Instead of asking for a specific number, they talk about ranges, growth, or compensation packages. This makes the conversation feel more professional and less personal.
Think of it this way. In English-speaking workplaces, money conversations are usually framed as business discussions, not emotional or personal ones. So instead of saying, "I need more money because my rent is high," a native speaker might say, "I'd like to discuss my compensation based on my recent contributions." The message is similar, but the tone is completely different. Now that we've talked about the cultural rules around money at work, it's time to look at something very practical. What we call the safety ladder. This is a simple way to understand how different phrases can sound more or less professional. Imagine a ladder with 3 levels. At the bottom, you have phrases that are too direct and can make people uncomfortable. In the middle, you have phrases that are grammatically correct, but still sound awkward or too emotional. And at the top, you have the phrases that native speakers actually use in professional situations.
Let's start at the bottom, level 0. These are the phrases you should avoid in professional settings. They may sound normal if you translate them from your native language, but in English-speaking workplaces, they often feel rude or immature. For example, saying, "How much do you make?" is extremely direct. It asks for a personal number, and that can make the other person feel uncomfortable.
Another example is, "What's your salary?" or "When will I get more money?" Even though these sentences are grammatically correct, they sound too blunt. They focus only on money, and they don't show any awareness of professional tone or workplace culture. If you say something like this to a boss or coworker, they might not say anything, but they could quietly judge your professionalism.
And there are also phrases that sound judgmental, like, "Why is your salary so low?" Even if you're just curious or trying to be friendly, that sentence can sound offensive. It can make the other person feel embarrassed or criticized. So level 0 is all about avoiding language that is too direct, too personal, or too emotional.
Now let's move up to level 1. These phrases are not rude, and they're not grammatically wrong, but they still don't sound very natural or professional. They often sound like direct translations from another language. For example, "My salary is low," or "I want a higher wage." These sentences are technically correct, but they feel negative and a little too direct.
Another example is, "I need more income," or "This job doesn't pay well." Again, there's nothing grammatically wrong with these sentences. But they focus on complaints rather than professional discussion. In a workplace, native speakers usually try to frame these conversations in a more neutral and businesslike way.
So level 1 is not terrible, but it's not ideal. If you use these phrases, people will understand you. But you might sound a bit awkward, or too emotional, or not very professional. It's the kind of language that feels correct, but not natural.
Now let's move to level 2, the top of the safety ladder. This is where you want to be. These are the phrases that sound polite, indirect, and professional. For example, instead of saying, "How much do you make?" you could say, "What's the salary range for this role?" Notice the difference. You're not asking for a specific number. You're asking about a range, and that sounds much more professional.
Another great example is there room for growth? This is an indirect way to ask about future salary increases. You're not saying, "I want more money." Instead, you're talking about growth, which sounds more positive and forward-looking.
You can also say, "I'd like to discuss my compensation," or "Could we revisit my salary?" These phrases sound calm, respectful, and professional. They show that you understand workplace culture and that you're approaching the conversation in a businesslike way.
And here's something important to remember. At level 2, we often use words like compensation, growth, package, or range instead of just saying money. These words sound more formal and appropriate in professional environments.
Think of level 2 phrases as your safety net. Even if you feel nervous, even if you're not sure what to say, using these kinds of expressions will almost always sound polite and professional. They protect you from sounding too direct or emotional.
Now that you understand the safety ladder and how tone changes the meaning of a sentence, let's move on to something equally important: vocabulary. One of the biggest challenges for English learners is that there are many different words related to money at work, and they are not interchangeable. Words like salary, income, pay, wages, and compensation may seem similar, but each one has a slightly different meaning and is used in different contexts.
Exactly. And when you use the wrong word, people may still understand you, but you can sound confused or unprofessional. This is what we call a translation trap. It happens when learners translate directly from their native language and assume that one English word covers all the meanings. But in English, especially in professional contexts, these differences really matter.
Let's start with one of the most common traps: salary versus income versus pay. Many learners think these words all mean the same thing, but they don't. The word salary refers to a fixed amount of money you receive regularly, usually every month or every year. It doesn't change based on the number of hours you work. For example, you might say, "My salary is $60,000 per year."
Salary is typically used for professional or office jobs. Managers, engineers, designers, teachers, and many other professionals usually receive a salary. It's predictable and stable. You know exactly how much you'll earn over a certain period of time, regardless of the exact number of hours you work each week.
Now let's look at the word income. Income is a much broader term. It refers to all the money you receive from any source. That includes your salary, but it can also include freelance work, investments, rental properties, bonuses, or side jobs. So if you earn $50,000 from your job and $5,000 from freelance work, your total income is $55,000.
So you can think of income as the big picture. It's the total amount of money you receive, not just what comes from your main job. That's why people talk about their annual income when they're filling out financial documents or applying for loans. They're talking about everything they earn, not just their salary.
Next, we have the word pay. Pay is the most general and informal term. It can refer to salary, wages, or any kind of money you earn from working. You'll hear it in casual conversations. For example, someone might say, "The pay is pretty good at that company," or "How's the pay at your new job?"
But in formal situations, like job interviews or performance reviews, pay can sound a bit too casual. In those situations, it's better to use words like salary or compensation. So instead of asking, "What's the pay?" you'd say, "What's the salary range?" or "What does the compensation package include?"
Now let's talk about wages. Wages are different from a salary because they are based on the number of hours you work. If you're paid hourly, you earn wages, not a salary. For example, a restaurant server, a cashier, or a construction worker might say, "I earn $18 per hour," or "My hourly wage is $20.
So here's an easy way to remember it. If the amount stays the same each month or year, it's a salary. If it changes based on hours worked, it's wages. This distinction is very important, especially when you're asking questions about a job or describing your own situation.
Now let's move to another important pair of words, raise and promotion. Many learners think these mean the same thing, but they're actually quite different. A raise means you get more money, but your job title and responsibilities stay the same. For example, you might say, I got a 5% raise this year.
A promotion, on the other hand, means you move to a higher position with more responsibility. Your title changes, and you may or may not get more money. For example, if you move from junior designer to senior designer, that's a promotion. If you also receive more money, then you could say, I got promoted and received a raise.
All right, everyone, now comes one of the most important parts of today's episode, a role play. This is where we put everything we've learned into practice. Talking about a raise can feel intimidating, even for native speakers. But if you use the right language, you can make the conversation calm, professional, and effective. So Sara and I are going to show you two versions of the same scenario. One that is too direct and emotional, and another that sounds professional, polite, and native-like.
Exactly. Version A is the what not to do scenario. Imagine you've been working at a company for a couple of years, you feel your salary is low, and you just want more money. In this version, the employee focuses too much on personal problems, comparisons with others, and emotions. Let's start. Tony, you'll be the employee.
Hi Sara, I need to talk to you about something. Sure, what's going on? I want more money. My salary is too low, I can't pay my bills, and I've been here for 2 years. Other people make more than me, and it's just not fair.
Notice how in version A, the conversation feels negative and emotional. The employee is frustrated, compares themselves to others, and focuses on personal financial problems. Even if the words are correct, this approach can make the manager feel uncomfortable and defensive.
Yeah, I can feel how tense that sounded just reading it. It's not how you want to approach a raise. Now, let's move to version B, which is the professional and native-like way to have this conversation. Sara, you'll be the manager, and I'll be the employee again.
Perfect. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi Sara. Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to discuss something regarding my role. Of course. Tony. What would you like to talk about? I've been with the company for 2 years now, and I'm really enjoying my role. Over the past year, I've taken on several new responsibilities, including leading the website redesign project and mentoring new team members. Based on my contributions and the additional responsibilities I've taken on, I'd like to discuss my compensation. I was wondering if we could revisit my salary.
I really appreciate you bringing this up, Tony. Let me review your performance and see what we can do. Could you send me a summary of the projects you've worked on this year?
Absolutely. I'll put that together and send it by the end of the week. I really appreciate you taking the time to discuss this with me.
This version B is completely different from version A. The conversation is calm, professional, and focused on value rather than personal problems. The employee uses polite language like, I'd like to discuss my compensation, instead of, I want more money. He highlights his contributions and accomplishments, which makes the manager see the business value he brings.
And notice how important it is to include specifics. Mentioning projects, leadership, and mentoring shows concrete examples of your value. You also always stay polite and thankful, which makes the interaction much smoother.
Exactly. Version B models the kind of language native speakers use when discussing raises. Focus on contributions, responsibilities, and value. Avoid complaints or personal struggles. Always be prepared with examples, keep a calm tone, and show appreciation for the manager's time.
So listeners, think about this. If you had to ask for a raise tomorrow, what accomplishments would you mention? What responsibilities have you taken on? Practice saying those out loud. Using professional language like this will help you sound confident and ready for the conversation. Wow, we covered so much in today's episode. From the safety ladder and cultural rules about money, to the right vocabulary, common mistakes, interactive quiz, and even a full role play. If you feel a little overwhelmed, that's completely normal. Learning to talk about salary in English is not easy, but just by listening and practicing these phrases, you're already taking huge steps forward. Remember, every small effort counts, and confidence grows with practice.
Exactly. Think about everything we discussed today: polite phrases, professional vocabulary, and framing salary conversations around value rather than personal needs. Even if you don't remember every single word or sentence right now, the key is that you start applying these strategies bit by bit. Listen again, repeat phrases out loud, and try using them in real conversations. The more you practice, the more natural and confident you will sound.
And here's something important. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Everyone, even native speakers, sometimes stumbles when talking about money. Mistakes are part of the learning process. They help you notice what works and what doesn't. The more you practice, the faster you'll improve. Think of each conversation as a mini rehearsal for the next one.
Yes. And we really want you to take action. Think about one phrase you learned today that you can practice this week. Maybe it's asking about a salary range, or talking about a raise with your manager. Write it down, say it out loud, and even use it in a real conversation if you have the chance. Every attempt, no matter how small, strengthens your English skills.
Also, don't forget to interact with us in the comments. Share one phrase you're going to practice, or tell us what confuses you most about talking about money at work. We read every comment, and it's a great way to get feedback and join the community of learners. Your questions might even inspire our next episode.
And if you found today's episode helpful, please give it a like, share it with your friends who are learning English, and make sure you're subscribed to Speak English every day so you never miss an episode. We create new content every week to help you improve your English naturally, one conversation at a time.
Remember, every conversation is practice, every mistake is a lesson, and every day is a chance to get better. Don't shy away from talking about your salary or career goals in English. Use the phrases we practiced today, focus on value, be polite and confident, and you'll sound professional every time. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here today. Sending lots of energy, encouragement, and a big virtual high five to all of you. Keep practicing, keep learning, and never stop improving your English.
Bye.
For now. And remember, the next time you talk about money at work, do it with confidence, professionalism, and all the phrases we practiced today. You've got this. See you in the next episode of Speak English Every Day. Keep speaking, keep growing, and stay confident.